Okay. All right, so we're about to get started with this round two of the panel on AI and the media. I'm David Doss with CKC Fund. I'll be the moderator. We're joined by our guests, Fred Douglas, Zephaniah Adoko, and Carl Zelig. If we could just have everyone introduce themselves briefly, please.
Fred Douglas, intellectual property attorney. Glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Zephaniah Adoko. I'm an actor, so going to be bringing a bit more of the creative perspective on this whole AI and entertainment thing. I've been in the industry for, 7 to 10 years at this point. I don't know whether I'm counting training or not. I played a supporting role in Nanny, which won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance in 2022, and I'm excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Carl Zelig, CEO of Chain Bill X, and thank you. I'm here for the AI panel and discussed some developments which you see in AI, and I will give it to our moderator and my partner in Chain Bill X, David Doss.
Thank you, Carl. So to start things off, Carl, you come from a background in intellectual property and patents as the inventor of the ringback tone, so multi-billion-dollar industry that you're the patent holder behind. What's your perspective on basically where the media industry is going in relation to patents and IP?
I have to quote a famous person, and I mean, this quote was attributed to a lot of people, so I really don't know who originally said it, but it's true. We overestimate which will happen in 1 year. We totally underestimate which will happen in 3 years. I think it was Bill Gates, but he stole it also surely somewhere like me. So probably also DOS. But the thing is, AI is up and rising. AI will change everything. When I think at the ringback tone replacement, as I was hitting the road in 1995 and was telling the people that music will play on the phone and that we replace the ringback tone with music and customized messages, the people were not understanding. They were saying, and how some people know that the phone rings and why somebody would do it, and all the things were totally obscure. Nobody saw how it will play out. It was the tech companies which drove it back, and then when it was crept to the sea, the telecoms were adopting it. But they could not adapt it on a piece of concept and paper. They could adapt it as the companies were coming out and the smaller companies and actually made business success with it. And then suddenly it was a big, huge thing. So for us, I think in AI, it's the same thing. We are behind the ball. When we think AI is this, what we are just right now doing, we are far behind. We don't know the leaps which AI will do. It will be bigger than the internet revolution, and it will be much more capable than we think. You remember the old James Bond movies? We had a phone which could send a picture to the headquarters, and we all sit there as children and said, wow. And then his car was driving for a moment by itself. We were like, wow, what a future this is. Now we are sitting there and we look at this old movies and say like, wow, I mean, this thing is really too big for what it's doing. Like our iPhone we would have seen this in 1995. We would have said like, come on, this is too unrealistic. Okay, so I get you back. Sorry.
Right on. Well, thanks for those insights. Well, and so kind of calling back to the previous panel, we heard from some writers, producers, film investors. Zephaniah, curious about your perspective on this as the actor's perspective on some of the opportunities and the challenges in this space.
I think that's a very interesting combination of words, opportunities and challenges. Right now, I think that what a lot of actors are seeing where this particular tech is involved, AI, is challenges. And the, you know, how are we going to get to the part where it's more opportunity than challenges? And I think a big part of that answer is in protections, and also in who is in charge of, you know, intellectual property, who is creating the advancements that we're getting with AI, and what is their motive. You know, if it's a motive that's driven, you know, entirely by cutting down the bottom line, as, you know, others said earlier, then it's going to continue to just be challenges where actors are concerned. But if we have a situation where, you know, there is compliance with regulations, there is motive to basically create more advancements in terms of what it is that is written down and followed as far as, you know, rules to using AI, then we can see more of a shift from the, you know, challenging side to the opportunity side. At the moment, there's a lot of fear, as well as there is with anything that is, you know, new and exciting for some and a little less exciting for others. It's like, what does that mean? You know, if we're talking about creating digital replicas of actors, you know, what are those going to be used for? Who's going to say when it can be used and when it can't be used? And a few of those questions were addressed to some extent by, like, the most recent Screen Actors Guild's our, you know, union contract that was ratified at the end of last year, and some of them remain unanswered. So in that regard, we're coming back to, you know, we have some protections, we want more protections. We, you know, understand that this is one of those things where to some extent it's gonna happen whether we want it to or not. And so kind of getting in front of it and being able to decide how it happens, to the degree that's possible, and also, you know, what that means for us, the ways in which it's used, and basically corporations that are, you know, whether that's an investment fund or individuals or investors, those who are more concerned with protecting the integrity of the art that's being created, those who understand that there's only so much that AI can do when it comes to the creative process. Those, you know, those are the individuals, corporations, investments that are really going to get support and backing from the actor side of things. So.
Thank you for that. And so, Fred, as I understand, you successfully defended, basically led litigation against AT&T, so have a background in IP litigation. We've been talking, I think, in this panel and previously about some of the various rights that artists have, and film producers, et cetera, have. But how would you kind of break this down into, for example, defending copyrights versus patents versus other intellectual property? What are kind of some of the finer points you see around, let's say, subcategories of how AI can create some problematic areas as relates to the law?
Yes. To paraphrase one of the other panelists, referring to AI being a wholesale theft of people's intellectual property, that is going on. Basically, as we know, AI, the large language model, they just scrape everything out there that they can find, put it in a database, and when you ask for a chicken recipe, or you ask for a song, or you ask for an invention, they're going to scroll through things that are already there, and they're not going to create anything new, but it's going to absolutely scrape someone's musical composition, someone's visual art, someone's play, someone's movie, someone's invention. Now, one of the things you have to think about when you think about litigation is the litigation has to be worthwhile. You're not going to do what one artist did pre-AI days. They sued a mother because a toddler was bouncing up and down to this artist's song and putting it on YouTube. There's not much money in that, and I don't think if you wanted me to file a lawsuit on that, it's not going to be worth your while financially. But the thing you want to think about as far as going against the wholesale ripoff of intellectual property and AI, and chatbots, and large language models is that suing for copyright infringement is one thing that you can do. And also there are patents involved. And if you just go by yourself and try to fund the litigation yourself and try to go against the big people, going against the big people takes a lot of work and a big team and a lot of risk, and they have the power to defend themselves quite well. But if you use funds, financial funds that have a portfolio of works, portfolio of copyrights, portfolio of patents, and also microchip designs, you can leverage the financial weight you have with a fund. And my understanding that Chain BLX is one of those funds that could accomplish that. And I think that you should think about leveraging the finance there that you can find through a fund.
Thank you, Fred. I think that also ties back to some of the comments from the previous panel, that the incentives need to be aligned, that this all needs to be structured in a way that can help artists, studios, etc., to make money. Carl, following up on Fred's point, what are your thoughts on how fund structures around, for example, IP and litigation, as well as around AI, could help to align those incentives?
Okay, so the biggest problem is really when you look in the internet and Wikipedia, it says, I invented the ringback tone. We also had the patents on the ringtones. We never sued on the ringtones. Why, Fred, we never sued on the ringtones? Because the people were judgment proof. We cannot sue he said, like the toddler bouncing up and down for a song. And when you make a ringback tone out as a student, it's judgment proof. You need to be able to go against the big guys. Now we have a big problem. When you have a software which has alternative use, and probably Fred later on, please speak about the example like from the alternative use cases, like for the video recorder. I don't want to go in. I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice. So Fred will tell all about this, or the Singer model like this, where they combined all the patents. The problem is, when in our what we are doing, we are looking at the artist, and the artist should be paid for his likeness, and his work will start. We also look more in the future. We know that AI will create episodes and entertainment from a half an hour to an hour within 5 to 10 years, which will be that you just enter in, I want to have a new like Law and Order episode, and I want this and this changed, and it's all AI driven and created. It will be not so good. And this I say, it will be not so good than the normal episodes, but it will be much better than like some other films which made it to the movies. So it's like, it will be a decent quality, and as more we deviate from the original work, it will lessen in the quality, and new sparks of like energy have to come in. But what I say is, like, now we have the problems with the actors. The actors will be violated, stripped of the rights, the copyright, the images, the script writers, like which feed the eyes and so on. The only chance which we have is we trace all this ownership, and we have also the patents, and we make it clear when you use the patents to create, to enable your product to create something like this, you have to implement to pay the actors and the screenwriters and everyone the fair share. So for this, both things are equally important. If not, the actors will run like right now, and we saw like that some actors had, sorry, I have to say it right out. There are porn movies out with people, they are violated in their image, in their right, and so on. And somebody did make a deep fake, and you don't find even who did it. So you have to regulate by the companies, and this you can do only when you have also a say-so in the patent world. And for this, our fund invests in the patents and invests in the copyright. So probably Fred can later on explain this whole legal structure, but I give it back to David. Thanks.
Thanks for that context. So, and I think something that's maybe not been discussed yet as much is about emerging technologies in general and how that can affect media. So, for example, something that has been a past topic of discussion is perhaps the role of blockchain in helping to kind of counterbalance some of the potential AI infringements, stuff like helping micropayments to artists or helping to detect deep fakes versus authorized image and likeness usage. So I think important to Carl's point to be thinking through the broad spectrum of technology and how it can be a part of the solution. And so okay, yeah. Well, you ask a blockchain guy, you get a blockchain solution. But thinking through, for example, the proper incentivization seems to be a bit of the theme, right? So looking at how, let's say, as an example, if you're, where the future could be in a few years, to Carl's point, if you're at home at the end of a long day on your couch, the near future could be that you'll say, hey, Siri, play me an episode of Game of Thrones where Daenerys Targaryen doesn't die and instead takes over the Iron Throne, right? So right now that technology more or less exists around AI, 3D rendering, this sort of stuff, right? But it doesn't exist in a compliance way. It doesn't exist where Emilia Clarke will be getting a payment for the use of her image and likeness. And also the quality of the technology isn't quite there yet. So investing into, for example, ways to help ensure both carrots and sticks to help make sure that artists get properly incentivized involves legal solutions, technology solutions. It could potentially involve blockchain and or cryptocurrency micropayment solutions where to that point of the viability, if it's a working class family that's using this technology, they're not going to be paying thousands of dollars for that, but they might be paying a couple of cents here, a couple of cents there, and you add that up times millions of active users, and that all of a sudden becomes significant payments. But to have a way to send those payments back to studios, to content creators at scale in a way that doesn't cost more to send than the money that's actually being sent to them, those are potentially fintech solutions, blockchain solutions, and related. But speaking of making sure that the artists get properly incentivized, so Zephaniah, from your perspective around some of this, I mean, thinking through a couple of these related themes, we're seeing, for example, increasingly artists, say, Ashton Kutcher, Jay-Z, Jessica Alba, being more involved in some of these, investment funds, having a bit more of a say over the narrative is, I think, something that someone said about this. And then also, I think you mentioned something about how basically the most recent negotiations around the actors' strike were really kind of still a work in progress. So what are your thoughts around basically how to be getting actors more involved and what are your thoughts around how that relates to, say, investment funds, but also how it relates to still the work that needs to get done around making sure that artists are properly compensated?
I think I can start at the basic things that a lot of actors complained about with the most recent contract, because there were things achieved. Before that, there was nothing in place in terms of protections for actors and other creatives around the use of AI. So this was kind of like the precedent case for creating protections. So, basic things like you have to get an actor's permission in order to create a digital replica of them. It has to be used for the specific project for which you got their permission. If you want to use it for something else, you have to get permission again. You have to pay them fairly. If you use the digital replica, you have to pay basically for the fair amount of time that it would have taken a human actor to do that work. You have to pay them for that while using their replica to do the work. The areas in which there were kind of gaps is at what point are you asking for permission? Because people complained about at certain stages of the casting process, it can be a little bit coercive because, we're in an industry where the demand, for work is a lot lower than the supply. And so there's very much that, that thing of, it's very easy to just move on to, the next person that they were considering if there is a no about XYZ that they want to do with you around AI, around this project. And so there were a lot of actors talking about, you need to regulate the point at which, a studio or a network is able to basically say, we want to create a digital replica of you and we want to use it for XYZ. If it's too early on in the casting stage, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. In a lot of ways, it, basically makes it so that certain people who are not going to say yes just don't get the work. So that's a gap that needs to be filled. Another such gap is, talking about paying an actor fairly, for the estimated amount of time it would have taken them to do the work that the replica is doing. Who decides? And this is why, we're coming back to, if there's systems in place, if there is, money behind and a collective of people and, intelligent lawyers who are concerned primarily with answering these questions in a way that is beneficial to the people who are actually doing the most important work, then we're starting to address some of those challenges. So it's all like, very new ground. There's a lot of moving parts, but things are happening. I was just talking today with my manager, who was telling me, some A-listers are going into their agencies and having digital replicas made because that's a thing that's already, it's like, it's there, it's on file, and whenever it's needed, this is how we're gonna negotiate and this is how much they're gonna need to pay to use it. In those cases, it's a little less of a threat because they are already, established to a certain degree, and their representation is the full 9 yards. But when you go down, a little bit below that and below that in terms of, name recognition and all of that, then there's, who is making sure that, all of those questions need to still be answered. And so I think that that's where, and the more that things progress, it's kind of something where you need to catch it early, because the further down you go, the less powerful, the more replicas are out there, the more permissions have been given for things that, maybe permissions should not have been given for, the less powerful the unions are, the less powerful, individual actors are. So I think in the early stages, to have, a fund, to have a collective of lawyers, to have money behind ensuring that, first of all, the gaps in the regulation are filled now, and that there is power behind enforcing those regulations and making sure that people are paid fairly, and that, it's standardized who decides and what exactly the metric is for deciding what is a fair amount of work that a human actor, would have done versus the work that the AI did. All of those questions, being dedicated to answering them in the right way and also enforcing those answers is very important.
Makes sense. Well, and as far as a few closing remarks, Fred, any last thoughts to leave us with?
I just wanted to extract something that was what you said previously. Forgive me if I'm misattributing what you said, but I understand is that the A-list people can monopolize their image, their likeness, but the danger is that the small fry are going to be ripped off and not known. Just one example, there was a male model ages ago, pre-internet and pre-AI. He signed off to have his Photoshop, his headshot used for a commercial, and it was supposed to be used only here in the United States. Well, he was traveling overseas once and went to a little bodega somewhere in, I think it was in the Middle East, and there was Nescafe had his picture right on the label. So he never would have, because nowadays someone can post that and you can see it on the internet, but back then you couldn't. And he had an uphill struggle, and he did sue and finally got some money out of that. But that shows you what something can be done today with AI. Referring to the small fry, they can take your image and they can change it a little bit, you know, give some different shading to it and change it a little bit. And you might not never know, and it might be something that belongs to you, especially here in California. Your likeness is well protected, so just be aware of that.
Well, and again, thanks to ChainBLX for this event and this panel series. Carl, any last, and to Digital Davos in specific, Carl, any last thoughts to leave us with as well?
No, thank you very much. It was a great panel. Thank you, David. For the next panel, I will just ask if the aviation panel will like to go next, and we go with a crypto panel next, so this would be good, but I pass it for other thoughts over. Thank you so much.
Oh,